Your perspective on the trends that we're seeing and what are the implications for Nigeria? So, for instance, would you say that there are clear other opportunities across the world for Nigeria to forge strong relationships to sell its oil?
Well, first of all, I won't read so much into the data coming out of the United States, because if you look at the trend, you will discover that 2017, when the U.S. imported as much as 120 million barrels from Nigeria, was actually an outlier line. Since the 2014 crash in crude oil price due to increase in shale production from the United States, if you look at data beyond 2017, what you actually find was that there has been a significant decline in U.S. imports from Nigeria anyway. 2015-2014, import was below 20 million barrels. So 64 million barrels in 2018 is not significantly lower. It's just the decline is just an indication of what has happened the previous year in 2017, which was an outlier.
So would you say that Nigeria has, if you like, moved on from the U.S. being a traditional buyer and forged strong relationship with other buyers?
Well, if we have to go back as far back as a decade, yes, that would be the indication, because the United States imports from Nigeria used to be much more significant than the level which we are seeing now. And it's quite easily, it's very easy to draw the conclusion as to why. If you look at the quality of the U.S. shale crude oil that has increased significantly in recent times, and the Nigerian light crude oil from the Niger Delta area is quite very similar. And what that simply means is that the need to import more light crude from countries like Nigeria is gradually reducing for refineries in the United States. And even more so, shale producers in the United States are actually becoming rivals to light crude producers like Nigeria in countries like the United Kingdom, in South Korea, and co. So it's expected that light crude from Nigeria, there will be some significant decline flow into the United States.
All right. Okay, but on the point of forging stronger relationships with potential buyers, I know, for instance, we sell a lot of oil to buyers in Asia. So would you say that Asia is like the new normal destination for Nigerian oil?
Yeah, Nigeria actually have a quite diverse number of buyers, and this is largely due to the fact that a lot of Nigerian cargoes are actually sold on the spot market as against contractual basis. And what this simply means is that it's on the need basis from different refineries in Europe, in the United States, in Asia. Most of them will actually pick up Nigerian cargo. So what we've seen is that, unlike most countries where we can basically predict the direction of where the cargoes will be moving to, that's not the case for Nigeria. So, but
would you describe that as a weakness, Jubril? Do you think that, or it is not really a big issue in your view?
Well, it is a big issue, because what this simply means is that in some instances we've had in the past, and even continually, there are cases where Nigerian cargoes were actually left in the market and are pushed to the following month before they are sold. If there had been a contract with some refineries, with some countries, what would have happened is that there won't be such instances will not be occurring. The destination of the cargoes would have been known long before they are even loaded. And that's quite significant, especially in a market where suppliers are becoming very competitive. As a matter of fact, we've seen that the only reason why the market is not so tense in terms on the supply side right now is because certain countries are actually reducing production.
Right. So let's talk a bit about that supply side dynamic and its impact on the oil price. First of all, are you surprised that oil has held up this well to start 2019? And how do you see things evolving from here?
Well, I'm not quite surprised about that oil price has rallied significantly in 2019 and that the prices has remained at this level, largely because if you look at data coming out of OPEC members, most importantly the Saudi Arabia production, what we've seen is that Saudi Arabia has actually led a campaign to significantly reduce production. The OPEC arrangements between OPEC and other countries to keep production lower, Saudi Arabia agreed to keep its production at 10.3 million barrels. All right. Just to put this in perspective, what we're saying is that Saudi production has reduced from 11 million barrels in November 2018 to around 10.3 million barrels, 10.2 million barrels in January 2019. An indication had that even by now, Saudi Arabia production has actually dipped below 10 million barrels. So such significant decline, as much as 1 million barrels coming from a single nation, is actually very significant and sufficient in some instances to keep prices at this level. So, however, as we move forward and there is further increase in terms of production from the United States and non-compliance from some OPEC members to some reasonable extent, including Nigeria, what we'll most likely see is that Saudi will actually losing its grip on reducing production, and we may have some very wide swing in terms of crude oil price. So I think what projecting into the future, what we are going to see is some very volatile crude oil price in the very near term.
So I think you're questioning the resolve of OPEC, and from your statement suggests that not every member will play the game and stick to the agreement in terms of those production cuts. So what does this say about OPEC as a stabilizing factor for global prices moving forward, considering that these cuts have been important to keep those oil prices higher? Because potentially, if we didn't see these cuts, then we could have seen a major decline in oil prices.
Well, if you look at the numbers for most of OPEC numbers, for what we have evaluated and from reports we've seen all around, is that compliance level has actually not really increased to 100%. But there has been some balancing factor, and that's the reason why that cut has been effective. For instance, there has been the unexpected outage in Venezuela, for instance, where power outages have basically stalled refineries and therefore crude production. Also, if you look at OPEC members individually, outside of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf producers, what you will find is that compliance level is quite significantly lower. Yes, there has been some reduction in terms of production, but most countries are not at 100% compliance level yet. And here we have Saudi Arabia, who actually is above 100% in terms of compliance. But we have to come to the reality of the fact is that for the past decade or so now, the direction of OPEC and the effectiveness of OPEC itself has heavily relied on how well Saudi Arabia decide to move in with the OPEC cut, and that's what we are seeing right now. So I won't say the entire OPEC members are not complying. They are complying, but not at 100% level. But it is expected that once Saudi Arabia is in for good, the cut will be very effective, and that's the reason why we are seeing crude oil prices probably continue to sustain this level.
Jubril Kareem, an oil and gas analyst, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.